We are now under a minute away from the top of the 7 o'clock hour Eastern Time. As you heard Steve Kornacki say, this will be the hour that our board will start to light up. The competitive House races will start to reflect themselves on the board. On the right, you see the states that are a half a minute away from closing. Georgia, Indiana, all of Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia. And in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you see what the stakes are tonight. There is not a candidate, a single national candidate, as there would be in a presidential election, but for many of the Democrats, many of the Republicans watching, that candidate is named 23. The 23 seats the Democrats need to take control of the House. Now, the 7 o'clock hour has arrived, and we have the following projections. In Indiana, in the Senate race there, the Donnelly race, we're calling it too close to call at the top of the 7 p.m. hour. In Vermont, no surprise, the re-election of Bernie Sanders, the independent, who caucuses with the Democrats. In Virginia, no surprise, Hillary Clinton's former running mate, Tim Kaine. This is the race Kaine was in against Corey Stewart, who made a big splash early, not so much along the home stretch. The U.S. Senate at this hour, and this, of course, is fluid and will change all night. That is the undecided portion in gray of the U.S. Senate. We'll fill in those seats as we go. And a race so many of you are following, so many people have asked about. Georgia, governor, too early to call. Abrams versus Kemp. But Steve Kornacki sure looks busy over there at that board. Steve, what do you have at the top of 7?
Well, I say with Georgia, Florida, Virginia, they're starting to close right now. And as you can see, there's two that we're keeping an eye on, two battleground districts here in Georgia, right outside Atlanta. And I'm just seeing quickly, it doesn't look like there's any vote yet. But let me just tell you how these are so important, obviously, because for Democrats, these are flip opportunities. But also, these are directly related to that governor's race. And let me just quickly show you how the 6th district here of Georgia. Remember this one. This is where Democrats dumped $30 million last year trying to get Jon Ossoff through a special election. That didn't work out. And yet here we go again. This is one of the most closely watched races out there. The story here, this is right outside Atlanta. This is the suburbs. About half the district here is the Fulton County portion, largest county in the state. Now, this is where Karen handled in that special election. She did well here. But if you're getting that surge Democratic turnout that Stacey Abrams about, this is one of the places you'll see it in Fulton County, in this portion of the district. You'll also see it in DeKalb County. This is about a quarter of the district. Handel lost here in her special election for the governor's race. You'll see it here, too. You probably see a little bit of, too. You probably see a little bit of it in Cobb County, too, the Cobb County portion of this district. So if Stacey Abrams is delivering in the governor's race, especially in this Atlanta area, it could spill over to this district, and it could also spill over right next door to the 7th district. This was sort of a late arrival on the Democratic target list, on the national media's list. You had Rob Woodall, the incumbent there. He's in a tough race. I'm told we may have some numbers here in Florida. Let me just quickly see. We do. So Florida, huge early voting state, right? We get a lot of vote. We get it very fast. You see, we've already got over 100,000 dumped right now. Rick Scott, the challenger, running ahead here. But you can see all of this is coming from one county. Pasco. Oh, this is interesting. Pasco County in 2016 was the county we looked at in the Gulf Coast region, and we said something's happening here for Trump. Now, this is just early vote. This is just early. But when Donald Trump, Pasco County, north of St. Petersburg, what you get here, a lot of retirees, a lot of folks from the Midwest. They come down to the Gulf Coast. They're in Pasco County. Rick Scott, early on here, so I'm not saying read anything into this, but keep an eye on this one, because this is the question we're asking tonight in the Senate race and in the governor's races. Can DeSantis perform at that Trump level in places like Pasco County, or does it recede? Does it go back to where Mitt Romney was in 2012? It wasn't enough for Mitt Romney in 2012. It was enough for Trump in 2016. So getting our first, this is another one to keep an eye on. Citrus County, it'll be a Republican county. The question is, how much is it going to be a Republican county? So just getting a scattering in, and it looks like some Democratic areas. Osceola County, the story in Osceola County, going to be a large Hispanic vote here, particularly there is a large Puerto Rican population. in Osceola County, talking about like Kissimmee here. So Bill Nelson expected to win here. But again, we talked about the Puerto Rican vote, especially in light of the disaster there last year. What effect might that have? This is a county to keep an eye on. So the early vote starting to be tabulated fast here in Florida. You got 3 counties spitting it out. Just try to make some sense of this, and I'll let you know when I got a little bit more for you.
Steve, can I, not to put you on the spot here for a second, but out of Virginia, NBC has projected that the winner of the Senate race in Virginia will be Tim Kaine. To get that kind of projection right at poll closing means that it was not a close contest between him and Corey Stewart. But it does make me wonder about the Virginia House races that have been of such a point of focus for Democrats. I know there's about a handful of Virginia races that Democrats think they might be able to flip. I also know that Virginia tends to count a little slowly. Looks like we're not seeing any numbers yet out of those races.
Yeah, we're not, but you mentioned, so Corey Stewart, the Republican who we are now saying is going to lose that Senate race there. Republicans were nervous about the effect he might have down ballot. Keep an eye in particular. There are 4 Republican-held seats in Virginia Democrats are targeting. Number 1 up here is the 10th district right outside Washington, D.C. It'd be a disaster for Democrats if they don't get that one. But keep an eye on this one, the 5th district. Now, this is a Republican-held seat here. It is an open seat. The population's kind of spread out, but look what's right in the middle of it. Charlottesville, Albemarle County outside Charlottesville here. Charlottesville itself, a very Democratic town. You expect the Democratic strength to be there. But if you look at the combination of the legacy of Charlottesville from a year ago, the impact that might have had on the local population, also the fact of Corey Stewart with all of his controversies being at the top of the ticket, this is a particularly interesting one to watch. Democrats have targeted it. Leslie Coburn, their nominee, polling has showed her close in this race. So it's one of the 4 to keep an eye on here. The other one we're monitoring too. There's the Dave Bratt district around. I'm trying to get over there. I'll get that in a second. There's the Dave Bratt district. It's the suburbs of Richmond, and then also Scott Taylor down in Virginia Beach. 4 in total in Virginia we're keeping an eye on as well, where Democrats are targeting.
Steve, just smack it. It usually works.
Yeah. There you go. Oh, yes. Oh, come on.
We're in this together. Right. We're never apologize. We're in this with you. Any of us who've tried to make an iPad work, it's fantastic. Hi, we're still.
Oh, you're waiting. I thought I was
no problem.
Let me just check to see if we've got some in Florida, and I'll just shout right back to you. How about that?
I think that's a polite way of saying you guys talk among yourselves.
Obviously, the East Coast closings, 7 o'clock closings, 7 o'clock Eastern, we knew was going to be a big deal. We're not getting a ton of surprise at this point. But, I mean, all the way up to Maine, all the way down to the southernmost district in Florida, there are races that the Democrats think they are going to flip along the East Coast. Yeah. And, I mean, the president's approval rating is bad, but it's not terrible. You know, the Democratic wins tonight in the exit polls, the first round of exit polls, all look like they're going the Democrats' direction. I mean, at some point, you know, the Democratic confidence tonight is going to run up against real numbers. But starting to see these numbers come in on the East Coast, you can just sort of feel 2016 washing back over you right now in terms of expectations, pollings, and yet we don't have the real numbers.
And talk about, I mean, Florida. There's so much PTSD tied to Florida. 2000, the recount, election night. I mean, and I think on election night, I was sitting here in 2016 when Trump won Florida. That was when the night started to turn. Yep. From the Trump campaign's perspective. I mean, when they won Florida, I think that was the first time, and people have reported this out, that people, and they didn't write a victory speech. They didn't think they were going to win until Florida went for Trump. So to see Florida, and all the polls have had Andrew Gillum up a little bit. I mean, to see Florida now possibly swinging back to being run by a Democrat is remarkable. And you know, I know there's so much, talking about PTC, there's so much trauma from getting it wrong from our side of it and for the Democrats. But this is, if Democrats have a good night in Florida, that says something really important about the next 2 years.
And in Virginia, honestly. I mean, Virginia, because Virginia has off-year elections at the state level, Virginia's already had a chance to weigh in the post-Trump landscape. And when Virginia went to go vote in the first nationally watched elections after Trump was elected, they went blue hugely, right? The popular vote for the state legislature was like double digits. Yep.
Yeah, Democrats it was amazing. It was amazing. And the polling before that, interestingly, did not really catch that. The blueness of that wave. Yes. Which was kind of interesting.
And Democrats ascribed it to get out the vote and turnout and enthusiasm, stuff that you can't necessarily measure on paper.
The Democrats almost took the House of Delegates within like one seat, which was not ever going to happen.
Well, had the state not been gerrymandered, they would have taken. Had that legislature not been gerrymandered, they would have taken the House of Delegates by a mile. I mean, that's the other thing that's going on tonight, and we don't really talk about it because it's become the climate, and so we don't talk about it when we get regular storms. But the country is gerrymandered to structurally benefit Republican candidates in such a way that if you look at the popular vote for Congress tonight, I mean, Democrats may need to win the popular vote by double digits in order to have a chance at winning control of Congress.
That is why these governor's races and state legislative races are as important as these congressional races, because they will control the redistricting after the next census.
Yeah, if the playing field is going to be untilted, they will be the ones who do it.
Chris Matthews, I owe you. I just got the eye from Steve Kornacki across the room at the board. What do you have?
Yeah, let's take a look. We showed you Florida Senate. Let's take a look at Florida governor. Now, look, you see a lot of gray on the screen, but we say so much of the vote in Florida is early. So I'm going to show you a screen, and there's going to be a number that's a little misleading on it. I'm going to try to put it in perspective because we got a lot more of the vote than it looks like. This says 1% is in Pinellas County. 1% of election day precincts are now reporting. You add this up, you got more than 275,000 votes that are counted here. We estimate, based on our projections, that's well over half the vote that's going to come in from Pinellas County. This is St. Petersburg. Think of that. Now, take a look here. We said this is the area, that Gulf Coast, where Trump did well, overperformed in 2016. In 2016, Trump won Pinellas 49-47 with a little over half the vote. The early vote now in and tabulated. DeSantis running 3 points short of the Trump pace there. Now, that is an encouraging early sign for Democrats. Obviously, it raises the question, election day vote. Republicans seem to have a surge with the election day vote in 2016. Independents seem to break their way. So what happens with the remaining, let's say, 40% of the vote from this county when it is tabulated, the same day vote? Was there another Republican surge? Can DeSantis match that number, or did independents break differently this year? If you're looking at this number out of Pinellas County at the end of the night, that would be good news for Democrats. Same story north of there. We were mentioning Pasco County a minute ago. Again, we expect this is more than half the vote that's already been tabulated here. It says the early vote is not routed through precincts. The early vote goes into the county, so it's a misleading number. This is more than half the vote. It's been counted, and you see, again, DeSantis running 3 points underneath the Trump 16 total there. He's ahead. We expected him to win here, but look at that, a 22-point margin there for Trump in 2016. It's clocking in at 12 right now. Again, I said, is it going to be closer to Romney or closer to Trump? This is closer to Romney. The question is, when they count that same-day vote, was there any kind of a Republican surge? So we are starting to get a significant share of the vote in, and I'm just checking here. Okay, Tallahassee, by the way, I just saw this pop up. Again, Leon County, of course, Andrew Gillum is the mayor of Tallahassee. This is a Democratic area, but you see, probably not a surprise here. He is overperforming where Clinton finished in 2016 in a Democratic county, his home county. But so Gillum, again, more than half the vote here in Leon County, out to a 2-to-1 advantage there. So you see, statewide, that's what it all adds up to there. But really, that's my question. Some of these key counties in 2016 where Donald Trump overperformed and surprised everybody on Election Day, can DeSantis, who tethered himself so closely to Trump, trying to replicate that strategy, can he replicate that performance? Or do we look at something more like 2012?
Steve, thank you. And thank you for the context in every case, showing us the Trump performance and in some cases the Romney performance. And just holler if you have results that we need to go to. In the meantime, we keep telling folks it's going to be a minute before we have answers on Georgia. Katie Tur is in Atlanta for us at a polling location where people are still in line to vote, even though the polls have closed officially. Hey, Katie.
Brian, you just missed a mini celebration here as the last person went up to begin the process of voting here at this church. This has been a packed polling place all day. The workers got here, and let's walk over here. The workers got here at 6 a.m. this morning. They expect to be here for a little while longer counting the ballots. They say the turnout here has been presidential election level. This is not a midterm election. People are excited about voting. Let's try to talk to somebody in line. Hey, ma'am, can I just ask you, you were one of the last last people in line. You came in at the wire. They closed the doors right behind you.
Yes.
Why was it so important for you to come out?
Appreciate you. Well, all right. For obvious reasons.
So in this race, are you voting because the governor's race?
This is one of the most important elections ever.
Why?
Because of the state of the country and because of the state of the union, I would say.
May I ask who you're voting for?
No.
No, you don't have to tell me.
Okay.
You do not have to tell me, honey. Don't you worry. What about you? You're voting for Stacey. You're happy to say that.
Yes.
Why are you voting for Stacey?
Because I feel comfortable.
Yeah. Were you concerned about voter suppression at all and any of the issues?
No.
Nope. Having a hard time at all getting your vote cast?
No. Well, it was hard to get up here.
Yeah.
And I was ready to vote.
They had lines here, guys, that stretched around the block for hours. I was talking to the lady in charge here. Valerie, you want to come talk to me real fast? Valerie, I want to ask you, what's it been like here all day watching people come in to vote?
Crazy.
Crazy?
Yes. We got here at 6.
It's just one word, guys. Crazy.
Crazy. We got here at 6 o'clock this morning, so we had lines all day.
Yeah. Any issues at all voting?
People sometimes in the wrong precinct and not having patience to wait.
And they've cast provisional ballots when they do that?
Not many. We only had about maybe 15.
Got it. And you heard some problems at various other places, but nothing here.
No problems.
No problems here. You guys have been watching along with us. There have been problems at some Gwinnett County polling places. They've extended some of the polling times, and I think about 2 polling places in this state. All in all, I mean, this is, you guys are talking about it, this is a state to watch. It's a race to watch. Yes, we're focused on congressional races, what happens in the Senate and what happens in the House, but the governor's races are so important. If the Democrats can take over a number of governor's mansions across the country, that could really change the way voting maps look in 2020 and 2022 and 2024 going forward, because these governors will have the power to veto any maps if they're taking over from Republicans, any maps that are drawn by Republicans. So it could look a lot different in the coming years.
Katie Turr in Atlanta. Katie, thank you for that. Reminder to all our viewers that elections are local matters. Elections are successful because of people like the woman we just met.
Valerie, my heart goes out to you. She gets up there and says, how is it? Crazy. Problems? No.
It was crazy. The president, he tried to run above everything. The president came twice, and Scott had to be with him twice. Once in Fort Myers 10 days ago, once the other night in Pensacola. Yeah. The pattern of where the president visited in the last 2 weeks and the downturn in the statewide number for that Republican candidate was pretty consistent across the country. When I've talked to Republican pollsters, Ted Cruz lost 4 points after the president visited.
Really?
That's why McSally and Heller didn't want him to come in the last visit. I think that Scott's going to ask himself, should he? Look, I had a strategist say to me, here's the problem with Trump. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't win without his base, and with him, you can't win the
Explain how Gillum played that, because Gillum in the last, we've been trying like hell to get him on our show, like everybody has. He's determined to stay local.
Well, I think in a governor's race, you want to, you know, look, I think nationalizing him got him the nomination in some ways. But at the end of the day, people, you know, most voters aren't like us putting them in red and blue, you know, T-shirts, okay? Most people, when they decide on their governor, actually think about the person first. And, you know, one of the things that I think we're going to, look, Andrew Gillum has run a really good campaign, but he was helped by one of the worst gubernatorial campaigns I have seen in my lifetime in the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis never explained why he wanted to be governor. He just decided one day, I want to be governor. Donald Trump, can I be governor? Will you endorse me? He does. I talked to one high Republican, Nicole, in Florida, somebody that I know you'd be familiar with, who said to me, you know, I asked him, why is he running? And he said, well, I want to appoint Supreme Court justices. And this person said to him, okay, that's on day one. What are you going to do the rest of your term? And he had no idea. Wow. So DeSantis was looking to step up in office, but didn't have, and somebody else told me he'd rather have been a senator than a governor.
Can I ask on the...
That was clear, because he wanted to pick federal judges. I mean, governors don't get to do that.
Well, the state Supreme Court does have 3 open seats that on day one of the new governor,
you will get,
you do get to appoint those.
Has Bill Nelson run a better re-election campaign than people have been giving him credit for?
It's hard to say, because I think, look, I think he stayed more competitive with Rick Scott than he gets credit for, but it's the DSCC that gets credit for this, for Nelson. And I would say this, because they They poured all the extra money that was necessary. Rick Scott is his own super PAC. Okay, he put in some. I mean, he spent more than both the super PAC and Nelson combined. I think he got into the $60 or $70 million. But they kept Nelson alive, kept him competitive when he could have been swamped with money. Gillum, though, is the special sauce for Nelson. Okay, because Nelson was, look, Scott in isolation, I think, wins this race against Nelson just by simply saying he's been in Washington too long.
Right. And here's $1 billion.
That's right. Gillum was, look, the governor's race was the marquee race, not the Senate race.
Yeah.
This was Gillum, and I think...
And at the end, you see Nelson up there with Barack Obama, with Andrew Gillum, Bill Nelson up there looking strong, looking like he's part of a winning team.
By the way, and here's the irony to all of this, Bill Nelson's people swore Gwen Graham was going to be the better ticket mate for them.
Yeah.
It turns out to be absolutely wrong. Listen, we're very early. If Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum win tonight, I think it transforms how Democrats run in the South. Yeah. I think this idea, if Phil Bredesen doesn't get close, but Andrew Gillum and Stacey Abrams wins, I think that this will, it just will transform how Democrats think about running in the South. You don't, the clinging to the middle and hoping it inspires the Democratic base, you know, Michelle Nunn will now look probably, and Jason Carter, who both just got clobbered in Georgia running that kind of race, are probably looking at Stacey Abrams going, oh, you know what? Maybe some of these progressive Democrats were right.
Look at how Bredesen handled Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
And look at and look at how Beto O'Rourke. I mean, you look at Texas and Tennessee. Bredesen chose one way to run. Beto chose another way to run.
Beto has suspense tonight. Bredesen doesn't.
It looks you're perhaps. I mean, but yes. I mean, that's. I'm just saying that's something that Democrats in the South, I think, ought to be thinking about. Is Gillum and Abrams may be providing a more fruitful path for them.
Yeah,
I think it also
to vote for.
And it makes Trump's racist campaign musings more toxic for Republicans. It makes it a harder bet to stand with Trump when you're running against candidates whose very presence on the campaign trail sends the message anyone with kids wants to send. It makes Trump's toxicity far more perilous.
Can I just tell you, and it also I want to remind people, don't just assume you know how the Mississippi runoff is going to go. Okay, there's going to be a runoff. There's a chance that decides control of the United States Senate. But when you see how other Democrats have, how Stacey Abrams and Gillum ran in the South, and how Beto, Mike Espy is going to look at that, and it's just going to make, like I said, I think it transforms how Democrats run in the South.
You know, I think the most inspiring picture is what you mentioned a couple of days ago when you saw Barack Obama coming in and holding up the two hands of Bill Nelson and Gillum, and it was an inspiring picture. African-American guy helping out the white candidate in blunt terms.
You see there on the graphic what we're coming up on. We're 10 seconds away here. 7:30 poll closings, and Steve Kornacki, we're coming to you after we have the results so far, at least tonight, in the 7:30 closings. In West Virginia, a closely watched Senate race. Joe Manchin, speaking of deciding how to handle the Kavanaugh matter, too early to call. Ohio Senate, too early to call, though Sherrod Brown is in the lead thus far and has the advantage. The Senate at this hour, again, pay attention to the undecided, the vacant gray seats in the center over party balance this early in the evening. Ohio governor, too early to call at 7:30 Eastern time. And one of the big races we keep touching on, so many people are following, Georgia governor, too early to call. Over to Steve Kornacki at the board. What do you have?
Steve, I understand that we've got some new important numbers out of some of those Virginia House districts that we've been looking at.
Yeah, we said, remember, there are four Republican-held seats Democrats are really going after in Virginia. Where we've got the most votes in right now is right outside Washington, D.C., the 10th district. This is a name you've been hearing a lot about this year. Barbara Comstock running for re-election in a district Hillary Clinton won by 10 points. So it's less than 48% in right now. Again, but we've got well over 40,000 votes. And interestingly, you can see where this vote is coming from, and I think it's going to be pretty instructive. This is Loudoun County right here, outside Washington, D.C. This is the biggest chunk of the district. About 40% of the vote overall is going to come out of Loudoun County. That's where most of the vote that's in is from, and you can see Wexton, the Democratic challenger, running at 56%. 56% is the exact same vote total, vote share, I should say, that Hillary Clinton got in the Loudoun County portion of the 10th district of of Virginia. So she is running at Wexton is Hillary Clinton's numbers right now, and Hillary Clinton carried this district by 10 points. So again, of the 4 districts, the 4 Democratic districts Democrats are targeting in Virginia, the 10th is the one they felt the most confident in. It would be a catastrophe for them, I think, if they did not carry the 10th, but they are getting out of the largest part of that district the number they want to see right now. We can also show you starting to get about 20,000 votes now in the 7th district. Again, this is rooted around the Richmond suburbs here. Dave Bratt, who set off that political tsunami in 2014, knocking off Eric Cantor. Henrico, this is about a third of the district right here in this county. Still a lot more vote to come. This is encouraging for Democrats here. Spanberger running ahead early, but this is a place I can just give you the number here, which I think she's got to kind of shoot for in this part of the district. Hillary Clinton got 52% of the vote in this part of the district, and Hillary Clinton didn't carry the district. Spanberger might need to get that a little bit higher as the votes continue to come in. But again, overall in the 7th district, Spanberger out in front by a point right now. And we can very quickly show you, we said that 5th district there in Virginia, the Charlottesville-based district, starting to get some numbers. You see here Riggleman, the Republican, out in front. Now, what hasn't come in yet here is Charlottesville itself. Charlottesville, the biggest sort of single city in this district. What has come in down here by Roanoke, this is the most pro-Trump part of the district, and you can see Riggleman. These are Trump numbers so far. Still more vote to come in, but the question was, would there be slippage in Trump country? In the Trump country portion of this district, Riggleman is getting Trump-level support right now. So that is what we're seeing in Virginia right now.
Steve Kornacki, thank you.
In terms of what we are watching, and as stuff starts to come in at this point, one of the things that we are keeping in mind is the national exit polls tell us a little bit about the direction of things overall, but those turnout numbers are going to be key. So, for example, in that Coburn race, Denver Riggleman versus Leslie Coburn, what Steve is saying is that in the Trump parts of the district, you're getting Trump-level numbers, but we haven't seen the non-Trump, we haven't seen the Democratic-leaning parts of that district. Yeah. Democrats are counting on not suppressing the Trump vote, they're counting on turning out huge new numbers in the Democratic Party.
Right, and in Charlottesville, after Charlottesville, there is going to be a big Democratic vote. Now, we just don't know how big, but clearly there's going to be a big Democratic vote. So that district is going to be, you look at that margin in Virginia 10 with Barbara Comstock losing to Jennifer Wexton, that's a big margin. I mean, that bodes well for Democratic hopes of taking the House.
There's the board right there. You can see it's just over half the vote in. I think this is one, I mean, Barbara Comstock has been on every list of the most vulnerable incumbents this year, just because that district was plus 10 Hillary Clinton and because Jennifer Wexton is a very strong candidate. And you add those two things together and there isn't much of a way out for Barbara Comstock.
It was everybody's early evening bellwether.
That's right. But if Barbara Comstock is ousted, she will become, it'll be a landmark. She will be the first Republican incumbent to lose her seat tonight. But it won't be enough to tell you much about what's going to happen. It'll be the margin.
The margin will be important. And one thing that Wexton did, she constantly ran ads saying Barbara Comstock voted with Donald Trump 98% of the time. 98% of the time. I mean, that ad, you just couldn't get away from that ad.
And you know what? That works everywhere in the country, because even the most outspoken anti-Trump Republicans in the country, in the House and the Senate, still always vote 90% of the time plus with Donald Trump because of the way Congress works.
Right, and even Jeff Flake, who I think is now famous for being a Trump critic, has voted with him most of the time. It's important, though, we're going to be talking about turnout all night, and when we talk about the kind of night Democrats are having, if it's good, it's going to be because they grew the pie, not because they, as you said, they didn't suppress any of the Trump vote. But if you need to know how important voter suppression was to the Republicans, just watch Donald Trump in the last 24 hours. He said yesterday he made up a conspiracy about voter fraud. There isn't widespread
threatening people about the penalties.
Law enforcement waiting for you.
There is no inner monologue. Julie Pace said this once to the AP after interviewing him. There's no inner monologue and outer monologue. There's just monologue. So from Trump's mouth, you heard how important voter suppression was for Republicans.
I've been alerted. Steve Kornacki has something for us. Steve.
We got a bunch we can take you through. Let's go back to that congressional district. The first one we got votes from tonight, the 6th district of Kentucky around Lexington. Maybe it's easier if I'm on this side. Amy McGrath, the Democrat, now has jumped out to a lead here. The reason, again, we have been stressing this. Fayette County, 40% of the district, this is basically the city of Lexington. We got now, this is about accurate. We got about 60% of the vote that is in from Fayette County. She's running. Remember, we said the benchmark, 60% for her there, roughly. She's running at 60%, and that translates, there's a sort of an imbalance here in terms of a little more Democratic vote in. Still to come, and I think crucial for McGrath beyond Fayette County is going to be Franklin County. That's where Frankfurt is. That's got to go Democratic for her to be in the game here. That's the update there. We can show you quickly Indiana. I want to just, again, Braun, the Republican, continuing to lead. Only now are we beginning to get votes in here from the big Democratic areas. Marion County, biggest county in the state. Indianapolis, this will be the biggest Democratic county. You can see this is a very low early vote percent historically has come out of Marion County. I think that's what you're looking at here. A lot more same day. There's going to be a lot more votes than this. Democrats keeping their eye on Marion County. They are keeping their eye on Lake County up here, second biggest county in the state. This is St. Joseph County. Notre Dame is here. Joe Donnelly's old congressional district was in this part of the state, so they want to see that. And again, we also want to see, I said at the start of the night, if you start seeing blue in southern Indiana, you say take a trip back in time a little bit here. Barack Obama in 2008 when he won Indiana, won counties in southern Indiana. Joe Donnelly in 2012 when he got elected, won counties here. Hillary Clinton was not in the game here, but you do see some blue popping up. These are not complete. This is sort of, I think this will be, you got Clark County right here. This is the other side of Louisville. Louisville's kind of on the other side of the river there early on, but let's see if you keep getting blue there. In Florida, very quickly, we now have in Florida, vote-wise, VA 10, has Virginia 10 just been called? Ladies and gentlemen, we have our first flip of the night. Here it is, the 10th District of Virginia. We just told you the Democrats got the level of support they needed in the key county in Virginia 10. We are now projecting that Virginia 10 will be a pickup for Democrats. That means Barbara Comstock, the Republican, defeated for re-election, and that means critically that our countdown here, we said Democrats need a net gain of 23 seats. It goes down to 22, so Democrats are now 22 away from control of the House. Again, we said this would be a catastrophe for Democrats if they weren't carrying the 10th. We figured this would be the first to be called. Mark it down, though. That is the first to be called on this night. Quickly, though, to bring you back to Florida, because we got a lot more vote that just came in Florida, and I want to quickly take you through it. These three counties right here are the heart of any Democrats' chances in the state of Florida. We now have the early vote in from all of those. We have the bulk of the vote in, it looks like, from these counties. And again, Hillary Clinton in 2016 did not carry Florida. She did pretty well in these Democratic parts of the state. Take a look here. Palm Beach County, Hillary Clinton got 57%, Gillum running at 62. Broward's the biggie. Clinton got 67%. Gillum right now outpacing that. Miami-Dade, Gillum running a little bit short of that right now. But then again, we said the Gulf Coast. The question is Democratic strength here, and do you get Trump surge like you had in 2016 in the Gulf Coast? Take a look. Sarasota, this down 3 points. Again, getting closer to what you would have seen with Mitt Romney. Take a look, Charlotte. It's about level, a point off. Lee County, actually DeSantis is running ahead, significantly ahead. I'm just seeing that for the first time, and I'm surprised. That is one place, at least with the early vote, and that's significant. That's over 100,000 votes counted there. That very good news for the Republicans there. Pasco County off the mark. We showed you that earlier. Citrus County. And the big thing to keep an eye on here as Gillum leads statewide here with all that vote in the Senate and the House, the Senate and the governor's race, 52-48, 2 million to 1.8 million there in favor of Nelson, and running. The numbers don't quite match up, but the margin there, 52-47, 52-48. So Gillum doing a little bit better there head-to-head, but that's what we've got so far out of Florida.
Again, big picture there in Florida, about half the vote in, the Democrat leading both statewide in both the governor's race and in that Senate race. And going county by county shows us why they're lining up that way. Can I ask Control Room, do we have Alan Gomez standing by for us right now? I wanted to bring Alan Gomez into this conversation while we were talking about those Florida numbers, because one of the crucial things statewide in Florida and nationwide for a lot of races is going to be the issue of Latino voters. Latino voters tend to not turn out in great numbers in midterm elections. Latino voters are a wild card in an election where immigration has been prioritized and with such a ragged edge, the way the president has done so for every Republican candidate in the country this year. Alan Gomez is a reporter who has focused for a very long time on Latino voters and the politics of immigration. Alan, in terms of these Florida results we're seeing tonight and what we're starting to see nationwide, how do you think the Latino vote and immigration are playing?
Well, immigration obviously is taking center stage. I mean, I was fascinated to see some of the exit polling you guys were showing just a little while ago, where immigration is the #2 issue. I mean, if you look back just a month ago, before President Trump started his sort of assault on the migrant caravan and birthright citizenship and all that, immigration was running third, fourth, fifth in some polls, depending on what you were looking at. So that shows that he made it that much of an issue. Well, obviously, we're going to see which way that swings and whether that was a good thing for him. But when it comes to Hispanic voters, you're absolutely right. They have historically underperformed dramatically, way behind whites, way behind black voters. Last in 2014, 27% of eligible Hispanic voters turned out, of the population turned out to vote. All the indications so far is that we are going to see a bit of a surge this year. Polling indicates that it could get up to something in the 35%, 36% range. But because they have underperformed so much in previous elections, and it's been going just further and further down, we'll have to wait and see. But so far, the early returns show that, like everyone else that we're seeing out there, that they're going to turn out a little bit more this year.
And Alan, obviously, there is no single Latino community in the United States. There's a lot of different types of Latino communities with a lot of different geographic concerns and different ideological alliances. If we do see Latino vote spike in the way that you're talking, going from 27% up to something like 35 and 36% of eligible voters, how would you expect that to map in terms of partisan affiliation? Obviously, that wouldn't just be a pure Democratic vote.
I mean, predominantly, if you look at them on average, they are going to lean more Democratic around the country. And somewhere like Florida, things get very complicated because you have the predominantly Republicans. When it comes to the Cuban-American vote, Puerto Ricans are going to be a really interesting test this year. We talk so much about how this midterm election is a test of the president's policies, and obviously his handling of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico is going to be, that's going to weigh heavily on their decision when they come out to vote. There's a lot more Central and South Americans throughout Florida right now. So the Hispanic vote is very complicated here in this state. But overall, when you look around the country, when you look at places like Arizona and Texas and Nevada, where the Hispanic vote is already big and growing, Virginia, especially Northern Virginia, where you guys just called that first race, that's another place where it's really big. I mean, I think it's interesting. Comstock, she ran a very, very Trumpian campaign. She talked a lot about MS-13. She talked a lot about the dangers of illegal immigration. And look what happened already.
Alan Gomez, immigration reporter for USA Today, joining us tonight from Miami. Alan, thank you very much. Really appreciate having you here. If this ends up being on the Republican side, the election of the caravan, where the president put that at the absolute center of everything, and it ends up from the Democratic side being Latino voters turning out in record numbers and turfing out Republican incumbents, that will be the snake eating its tail.
And you're right, something we thought was going to be a plot line from 2016. Just to share our homework with you, we're on our way to another break. The very patient Steve Schmidt is standing by and will join us on the other side. But let me read off the list of 8 o'clock closings. We're coming up 16 minutes away. Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, D.C., Florida, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Tennessee. If you heard your state in there, even if you didn't, I would advise you to stay close. We'll be right back. We are back 11 minutes away from a huge batch of poll closings, and our decision desk is deciding right now what we are going to say about them at the top of the hour. In the meantime, I've told our friend Steve has some new numbers over at the board.
Yeah, let's take a look at Georgia. The picture coming in right now, it's very incomplete. You can see the numbers that have been tabulated, an overwhelming lead for Brian Kemp, the Republican. The reason, these are heavily Republican areas in small Democratic counties that have been coming in. The ball game here for Democrats really is going to be in the Atlanta metro area. You don't see much. Look, Fulton County, largest county in the state. This is what we don't have any votes coming out of here yet, but Fulton County, we think we're going to get like 350,000 votes or more total that are going to be cast here. Hillary Clinton won close to 70% of the vote here in Fulton County. DeKalb County, again, this is going to be, this was 81% for Hillary Clinton. We're going to have close to 300% of the vote. I think this one, though, when this comes in, it's going to tell us a lot. Gwinnett County, there are some precincts apparently where they've held voting hours open a little bit longer. Gwinnett County is a county, it's huge. It has changed dramatically from a demographic standpoint now. Non-white voters, African Americans, Hispanics, also Asians coming into this for the first time. Hillary Clinton in 2016 as a Democrat carried Gwinnett County. She got 51% of the vote here against Donald Trump. If Stacey Abrams can improve upon that, and if Stacey Abrams can build on the turnout there with those voting groups we just talked about. That could have a huge impact on the governor's race. It could also, as we say, have a huge impact on that race in Georgia's 7th district, which is most of that district is Gwinnett County. I should note we've now made another call from our battleground. This is a Republican hold. Remember, every district you see here is currently a Republican-held district that Democrats are targeting. The 6th district of Florida, Republicans, we project, are going to hold on to this somewhat comfortably here. So Republicans on this list is 66. They have their first save of the night. And very quickly, I did want to go back and show you Indiana because it is beginning to tighten as what we said here, Democratic areas beginning to report. This is Gary, Indiana, Hammond, Lake County, Donnelly doing a little bit better here than Hillary Clinton did in 2016. You're starting to get some vote out of Marion County. You're going to have, close to 300,000 votes out of here before all is said and done. Also, Fort Wayne, this would be, Fort Wayne's the city here, Allen County. If Donnelly were to emerge with a win here, that would be unusual for a Democrat. That'd be very big for him. So we're starting to see some of those Democratic areas come in there, and that race is going to tighten. So we will keep an eye on that as well, with a bunch of poll closings coming up any minute now.
On that, just to reiterate what Steve just said there, in terms of those House races that we're watching, we do have our first flip of the night from red to blue. We've got Barbara Comstock, Republican member of Congress, losing her seat in Virginia to Democrat Jennifer Wexton, and that Republican hold that Steve just outlined there. That's actually the district in Florida that Ron DeSantis used to hold. He had to give up that House seat in order to run for Florida governor. Waltz is the Democrat who came in to run to hold that seat for the Republicans against Nancy Soderberg. Waltz will hold that seat, and so that's one of the ones that Democrats had hoped to pick up, if only because it was an open seat, but the Republicans have been able to hold on there. As we're starting to see the first conclusive results come in tonight, we want to go to our dear friend, the eloquent Republican strategist and former Republican, I should say, Steve Schmidt. Steve, it's been too long since I've seen you, my friend. It's great to have you here tonight. I want to know, big picture, how you're feeling about the import of this election tonight.
I think if you're the Democrats tonight watching this from the National Party headquarters, you have some early reasons to be optimistic. When you look at the exit polls, it looks like Donald Trump was a determinative factor.
Steve, I'm sorry, I would only do this for a call. I just have to interrupt you for 1 second. Don't lose your train of thought. We do have a call. This is in the Ohio Senate race. Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown is projected to hold on to his seat in Ohio, fending off a Republican challenge from Jim Renacci, who had closely aligned himself with President Trump. Sherrod Brown had been somebody who Republicans had sort of salivated at the prospect of knocking off very early on in this prospect, but he will, it looks like, comfortably hold on to his seat tonight. Steve, let me get back to you there. Sorry, my friend.
When you look at the race, the issue I think that we're going to see play out over the night is the degree to which Donald Trump and Air Force One and the dramatic arrivals in all of these states for these mega rallies where he incited all manner of racial animus. In fact, does it turn out to be a pestilence arriving? Was it a plague of locusts for these Republican candidates? In Ohio yesterday, Donald Trump spent the last day on the campaign trail campaigning for Mike DeWine, who's running for governor of Ohio. Did he give Mike DeWine a lifeline, or did he push his head under the water? When we look at these Florida returns right now, it seems to be the case that Donald Trump was an anchor around the ankles of the two Republican candidates and may well have been instrumental in bringing about Democratic victories. At the end of the day, what the race has fundamentally been about is a referendum on Trump and Trumpism. Donald Trump has traveled the country. He's incited the American people. He's stoked a cold civil war. He has led a campaign of racial animus, the likes of which we have not seen in the modern era. It is something that would be recognizable to Lester Maddox or to George Wallace. And so what we're going to watch play out over the night is whether Trumpism faces its first validation or its first repudiation. And when you look at the exit polls, when you look at some of the early returns, I would bet on repudiation at this early hour, but it'll be a long night, and we'll see how it plays out.
Steve, do you feel like Republican candidates have a choice as to how they ally themselves or not with Trump? One of the things Chuck Todd was talking about here early on is that Republicans had hard decisions to make about whether or not they would stand there on a stage with Trump, whether they'd attend a rally if he came to their state to try to put his imprimatur on their own local races. Do Republicans have a choice? Can they say no to Trump and still turn out the Republican base enough to compete?
One of the things I think that we miss in our analysis and our coverage is this. We tend to say that the election is determined by the last big event that occurs in the campaign, as opposed to the first meaningful event. When Donald Trump arrived in Washington, D.C., there were three parties. There was an insurgent Trump party, a Republican party, and a Democratic party. The Republican Party capitulated to Donald Trump one by one by one. They surrendered to Trumpism. They became apologists for the incitement, for the cruelty, for the malice, for the assaults on our institutions, for the constant lying, for the illiberal assaults on the media. So they made the decision 2 years ago to tie themselves to Donald Trump, lock, stock, and barrel. That's the decision that mattered. Today, the bill comes due for that decision. So the question isn't what you do in the last week of the campaign, it's what you do in the first week of service. Every single one of these Republicans, by and large, when you talk to them privately or when you used to have private conversations with them, they would tell you that they were offended. They would tell you that they were appalled. They would tell you that they've been in meetings with him and they think that he's crazy, that he's unfit, but they would never say it publicly. And so the choice is to either repudiate or to validate. That's the question at hand. And I think that it gives these Republicans a pass to say that they didn't have a choice, that their hands weren't bound. They did have a choice. They had a choice to be fidelitous to the they had a choice to be fidelitous to the issues that they claimed belief in for most of their political careers until Donald Trump arrived on the scene.
Former Republican strategist, former Republican Steve Schmidt. Thank you for joining us, Steve. Sobering, as always. And Nicole Wallace, you and I were talking about this off camera a few minutes ago. There are Republicans who repudiate Trump, who call the president out on specific matters, and even call him out in general in terms of his overall approach to politics, and then they quit. Nobody calls him out and then votes against him or stays in office and decides to fight.
And we shouldn't there aren't many. I mean, you don't need two hands to count them. But the most specific was Bob Corker. He questioned his competence, his fitness to serve. He called this West Wing adult daycare, and then he proved. He actually held a hearing to sort of hear expert testimony about a president's nuclear power.
So just before the poll closings in less than 2 minutes, we've got a call.
Yeah, we've got another flip. You have your second flip of the night. This is the 27th District of Florida. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, the Republican who declined to seek re-election. This seat is now going to go Democratic. This is one that Democrats were worried about a few weeks ago. They nominated Donna Shalala against a former television anchor here. A district Hillary Clinton won by 20 points, but there's a large Cuban-American population here. There was a concern that Shalala was not faring well as a candidate, but now we've projected she has won the 27th district. This is a flip. This is the second Democratic pickup of the night. They began the night needing 23. They now only need 21. We've also made a call in the same area, the third Miami-Dade-based Republican-held seat, Mario Diaz-Balart. He has held on, and I believe we have another call just coming in right now. We said that district, that Charlottesville-based district, Democrats were hoping to win. We said that Riggleman was doing well in the Trump part of the district. He was doing very well. Denver Riggleman projected to be the winner there. Democrats do not get the pickup, so we now have 5 calls from our target list. Democrats have picked up 2 of them. Both of these districts, be clear on this, both of these districts were those districts that Hillary Clinton had won in 2016, now throwing out Republicans when it comes to Congress. So Democrats now have taken 2 off that target list in the House.
Steve Kornacki at the board, thank you. We're coming up on 30 seconds away from the 8 o'clock Eastern calls, a huge list. We're going to go after the Senate races first. We're going to break internally, then we'll take a look at the governor's races. But here is the list of states we'll be coming up on, starting with Alabama, ending with Tennessee. We've had some split closing times as we approach, again, the 8 o'clock hour here in the East. And we're going to start with one that we've been covering tonight. We just don't have the finishing data on it as 8 o'clock arrives. Florida governor, too close to call at this hour. Florida Senate, also too close to call. Missouri Senate, closely watched race tonight, too close to call at this hour. Tennessee Senate, too early to call. Blackburn is the early leader in that race. Massachusetts Senate, and the next 6 people are going back to work in the Senate. Let's just say that. Elizabeth Warren, no surprise. Connecticut Senate, Chris Murphy going back, no surprise. Delaware, Carper is going back, the Democrat, no surprise there. Ben Cardin in the state of Maryland. In the state of Pennsylvania, Senator Bob Casey. In the state of Rhode Island, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Over to New Jersey, too early to call, though Bob Menendez is in the lead, something of a huge undertaking given the campaign that Hugan mounted against him. Angus King, the independent in Maine, who caucuses with the Democrats, too early to call. He is in the lead, however. And then in Mississippi, this is, by the way, look at the current Senate. Again, those undecided seats in gray. That's what to concentrate on until we get a little later in the evening. I got ahead of myself. Mississippi Senate. We have 2 races. We're calling them 1 and 2. Too early to call? Too early to call. When we have a minute, we'll explain just how this is going to work in the state of Mississippi.
We may end up looking at, we may be looking at a runoff in Mississippi Senate and that race there on the right. We want to go back to Steve Kornacki right now because while Brian has been running down those Senate and governor's calls, Steve has been getting in the data to, I think, call a few more of these House races, right, Steve?
Yeah, we don't have any more calls, but we've got numbers coming in everywhere, and we just want to take you through what we're looking at right now, piece by piece. So first of all, we'll start in Virginia, where we've had 2 calls. Remember, 4 target districts there for Democrats. They've won the 10th. They have lost the 5th district. The 2nd district, this is Scott Taylor. That wasn't supposed to flip there. Let me just make sure I've got that back to even. Okay, Scott Taylor, embattled Republican incumbent, trying to hang on. The story in this district is largely Virginia Beach. It's about 2/3 of the vote is going to come out of here, Virginia Beach. Now, this is Trump won this portion of the district by 4 points in 2016. So Taylor right now performing as he needs to there. He's going to have to do that, continue to do that, because in the other 2 portions of the district, we've got vote here, the Democrat in York and really in Norfolk, the Democrat is exceeding Hillary Clinton's numbers. So we're keeping an eye on that one. We are keeping an eye on the 7th district of Virginia. Remember, the Richmond suburbs here, Abigail Spanberger leading very slightly over Dave Bratt here. This would be a major pickup for Democrats if they were to get it. The 6th district of Kentucky, we've been talking about this all night. Those rural areas starting to come in now. Andy Barr has taken a lead over McGrath, although you see it's very tight, about 3,000 votes separating them. So that one looking very close right now. We've got a few others in Florida of note. Carlos Curbelo, again, Republican, running for re-election in a district that Hillary Clinton carried. Curbelo right now, this is largely Miami-Dade. Plus, you go out to the Florida Keys here. He's running very slightly behind there as well. 2 more in Florida to quickly show you. Brian Mast here, he is running ahead right now. That was not supposed to color. And 1 more we can just check in on the 15th district. We showed you earlier, Ross Spano, the Republican. We said those numbers were looking decent for him early, and you can see he's leading by 6 right there at the moment.
Can I ask you one? I'm sorry. Can I just interject? Can I ask you one quick question about Virginia 5?
Yes.
Steve, that's the race that, as you mentioned, includes Charlottesville. You've called that now. Denver Riggleman, the Republican, holding that seat for the Republican Party. Leslie Coburn was the Democratic challenger there. How big of a prize is that for the Republicans? Were they really expecting to hold on to that one? I remember that was sort of a lean Republican race, but is that one that was really on the bubble for them?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this is one that Republicans, this would be almost a catastrophe for them to lose. Okay. You know, the way Virginia went, I think the way folks were looking at this coming into the night was the 10th Democrats had to pick up. They've done that. The 7th would suggest Democrats are on their way to getting the House. We're going to see what happens there.
That's the Bratt-Spanberger race.
Right, that's the Richmond suburbs. The 2nd district, there were some particular issues with Scott Taylor, some issues around a controversy there in that district. The 5th district's the one where if you added that to one of the others for Democrats, you're starting to say nationally that could mean wave. So again, the story here, I think Democrats not getting the gains they needed. This is Charlottesville itself right here. This is the county around it, Albemarle County, not getting the gains necessarily needed here to offset the strength that Riggleman got in this next heavily populated portion of the district, which is a very Trump-friendly part of the district.
Thank you very much, Steve. Sorry to interject there.
No problem. Governor's races are an important part of tonight. We have a partial list of them. Again, some of these closings were at 8 o'clock. In Florida, however, Too close to call? We're watching it.
Wow, very close.
To the state of Pennsylvania we go. Wolf, the projected winner, Governor Tom Wolf. Tennessee, Lee. Massachusetts, Baker. Illinois. Too early to call, though. Pritzker is in the lead. Alabama. Too early to call, though. Ivy is in the lead. Rhode Island. Too early to call. Raimondo is in the lead. And in Georgia, too early to call. Another widely watched race tonight where the numbers, the early raw has been all over the map.
10% in that Georgia governor's race that year. You mentioned the Illinois race. That is the governor's race that Democrats most hope to pick up. They have their strongest, I think, confidence in terms of flipping a governor's race. But as bad as the Senate map is for the Democratic Party, with all of these Democratic senators defending their turf in places that Trump won, including a bunch of states where Trump won by double digits, as bad as the Senate map is for Democrats, it is that good for them in terms of the governor's races. And so that Illinois race is first among a lot that the Democrats are hoping to flip. But those governors
really expensive.
And really expensive. Everything in Illinois is expensive. Those governor's races are going to be fascinating to watch over the course of the night because Democrats haven't been shy about having very high expectations there.
And they've got some of their best candidates running in these midterms, running in those gubernatorial races. Whatever happens tonight, Andrew Gillum is one of the top Democrats in the country right now. He had the right message. He had the right tone for running as a Democrat against in a climate so colored by Donald Trump. Stacey Abrams is one of the best candidates running in this cycle.
It's killing me that we've only got 10% of the vote in the Georgia governor's race.
Right.
Well, and the Florida race tightened. I mean, the last numbers we showed for Florida represented a real tightening in that race. So I wonder what came in that tightened up the Florida gubernatorial.
Kornacki, forgive me. I'm told Steve has more numbers. Steve?
Yeah, well, I just want to set up because I think some things are going to start happening fast here, and I want to get everybody ready for them because, again, the countdown here for Democrats at 21 with Pennsylvania votes coming in right now. Remember, they redrew the district lines in the middle of the year in Pennsylvania, and what that did was it created, first of all, some more competitive districts for Democrats. It also created some accounting issues. So we've been saying that the Democrats, these are all districts here where the Democrats are trying to unseat Republicans. There are a handful of districts across the country tonight where Republicans have a chance of unseating or taking Democratic seats. There's one they are virtually guaranteed to get. It is in Pennsylvania. And let me just show you about it. This has everything to do with the redistricting. It's the 14th district of Pennsylvania. They drew this in the southwest corner of Pennsylvania. Under the new lines, Trump would have won this district by 30 points. These are two first-time candidates running for it here. So the expectation is that any minute now, this will be called Republican and that this will become a Republican pickup. We're not going to see many of those tonight, but that would increase that number to 22 if that comes in first. However, I say there were a bunch of new districts drawn in Pennsylvania, and so we have to point out as well that there are a couple that work the other way down here on the other Pennsylvania. Start the newly drawn 6th district. Again, two first-time candidates under these new lines. This was a Clinton district, and you can go right next door under the new lines, a really big Clinton district. Also an expectation, the Republicans had pulled out of this race in the 7th. This is a Republican seat. Charlie Dent declined to seek re-election. It's competitive on paper, but the two parties were telegraphing they didn't think it was that competitive. So there's an expectation of Democratic pickups in these 3 districts and also one more out here, a name you'll remember, Connor Lamb, who won that special election earlier this year. The district he won it in being dissolved at the end of the year. He went and he decided to challenge in this newly drawn district a Republican incumbent, Keith Rothfuss. The polling has shown Connor Lamb out ahead by double digits. The Republicans pulled their money out of this race. So again, the expectation has been that Lamb would win this race and fairly easily. We will see if that matches up. But you can see in the next few minutes, a couple of these districts we expect to flip pretty quickly. There are others, they may take a little longer, but they're expected to flip as well. So I think in Pennsylvania alone, now that the polls are closing there, we're going to get votes. We're going to start seeing this number move around a lot.
Steve Kornacki, did I just see you flirting with Jersey 11?
Let's see if we've got something in New Jersey 11. I'm going to call that up right now.
I'm sorry to look over your shoulder, but I've been doing it all night.
Yeah, we don't have any vote out of New Jersey 11 yet. This is another one, though. Look, we talked about Virginia 10, the Democrats and Comstock. This is another one. Democrats are expecting to get this district with Mikey Sherrill. It'll be a very bad sign for them if they don't.
Okay.
Chris Matthews, as a Pennsylvania expert, can I just ask you, obviously the redistricting issue in Pennsylvania is a huge deal. It's a big part of why the Democrats think they've got a chance to take control of the House of Representatives. But you don't have a redistricting issue when it comes to statewide races for Senate or for governor. What happened with the Republican efforts to run somebody against Bob Casey or Tom Wolf? I mean, Bob Casey and Tom Wolf are fine, but neither of them is Superman. They both just walked away with those statewide races, and the Republican candidates were just nothing.
It's very hard to beat an incumbent governor, although they did before. But and Casey's a magic name in Pennsylvania. It's a sweet spot. He's pro-life, but he's a sweet spot with so many of the more traditional Democrats up in Scranton, in the northeastern part of the state. He's just an impossible name to beat. I think they didn't want to waste the money. I'm fascinated by what happens in Bucks County with Fitzpatrick. If they knock that one off, if they go out and knock off Mike Kelly out in Erie, I think there's 2 or 3 beyond. Steve mentioned that they can win out there.
Fitzpatrick and Kelly, both Republican incumbents.
Yeah. They can knock them off. And they can they can win the 10th, too, in Lancaster. So they can win not just the Philadelphia, Collier counties and Lehigh, which has always been the swing part of the state. If they pick up Bucks County against a pretty well-recognized incumbent, they're in business. Well, that's sweep time.
How much of a difference does it make that they had such weak statewide candidates at the top of the ticket? I mean, there is no President Trump on the ticket in Pennsylvania this year. The guy running against Tom Wolf disappeared. The guy running against Bob Casey disappeared. That doesn't help for their down-ticket races.
I know the burbs because I grew right on the edge of Bucks County. I'm telling you, the guy at the top of the ticket was on the Republican side, and his name's Donald J. Trump. Yeah. And I think a lot of the women this time, and men, more evolved men, as I said the other night, in the suburbs, I think that Hillary was a complication at the end. I heard from a lot of people, you'd be surprised by, find her complicated. Of course, Comey's report 11 days out didn't help. This time, it's all about voting against Trump. The American voter tends to be a voter against. And there was one thing you can say about the Democratic Party, they've been so inactive in terms of legislation or national profile, you can't vote against them. Except in a few
Once you're out of power, you can't do anything that offends anyone.
You're mad at the one that's running the show, and Trump's been running the show. So I think it's a great advantage to be on offense this time.
Pennsylvania, those counties, though, Erie County is a place where it would hurt the Republicans to have the economic message crowded out, which is what happened when Donald Trump grabbed...
You spent a ton of time in Erie, didn't you?
I spent a ton of time in Erie. I get some mail delivered there. But Erie was a place where Trump flipped Erie County because of the message about the economy. And no Republican has been able to run on the economy for the last, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, because Trump has been obsessed with the slow-moving humanitarian crisis that he calls a caravan.
And women are important. I mean, we didn't talk about it with Northern Virginia, but clearly the Comstock defeat is a big part of women. It's we call it a bedroom community. Single women in Northern Virginia are very much like the Philadelphia suburbs. They're highly educated, many single. They're very liberal on social issues, a choice, of course, on LGBT issues. Very liberal. It was just an opportunity for them to vote their feelings and also get the vote against Trump. So I think the big wins are going to come in those suburbs.
They didn't buy Comstock's MS-13 scaremongering, even though there is MS-13 in the Washington suburbs. But people put it in perspective.
Steve Kornacki, I don't mean to interrupt. I've just been alerted that he has new numbers over at the board. Steve?
Yeah, Florida has turned around a little bit here. You can see, let's start in the Senate side. The Senate and governor matching up pretty closely. You can see, very narrow lead. We're talking 10,200 votes right here for Rick Scott over Bill Nelson. Where has that come from? Couple places we can show you. Remember what I was talking about here? These counties where Donald Trump in 2016 particularly keyed by same-day voters. Not the early vote, but the same-day stuff that comes in later. Were we going to see Republicans match that? Here's one place where they've matched it. Volusia County. This is one of those counties 2 years ago we were looking at around this time and saying, wow, Trump is doing a lot better than Mitt Romney did 4 years ago. In Volusia, it was a 12-point improvement in terms of the margin for Trump over Romney, and you can see Scott is basically replicating what Trump did in Volusia County. So that's one example of it. I'll give you another one. You go down to Collier County, down here, getting down near Southwest Florida. Rick Scott actually running ahead of Trump's pace right there. I think we showed you Lee County. Think of like Cape Coral here. Again, we talk about the Midwest retirees, a lot of them who come down here. You can see Scott replicating those numbers again. So you're starting to see it. Manatee County replicating those numbers. Let's take a look up. We flagged this one earlier. Pasco, again, here you go. Pasco County, with same day, there's improvement here for Rick Scott. So you're starting to see that. Now let's take a look on the gubernatorial side in Florida, just to give you a sense of what's going on. The big picture number here, statewide in the gubernatorial race, close to what we're seeing. This is actually a 35,000 vote margin for DeSantis. Let's just take you through some of those counties again. Volusia County, again, you're seeing a similar story. Go down to Collier County, you're seeing a similar story. He's finding it in the same places. One other thing that I would flag here in terms of what Democrats are putting up on the board right now, Osceola County. 59-39, that's actually less. The margin for Clinton was 25. Still some vote to come, but that's only a 20-point margin in a key Democratic county right there. You can see 24-25 running about even in where Orlando is. So you're seeing, and it looks like same-day vote. In some of those places, Trump did really well, and in 2016, looks like Republicans are getting that today in Florida as well. And you got a very complicated picture there statewide right now.
We're going to try to page Chuck Todd and get him back into the studio as our son of Florida to talk about exactly what is going on in Florida. Steve Kornacki, stay on it and holler if you get anything new. Michael Steele is with us, the former chairman of the Republican Party. And Michael, if you were in your old job tonight, how would you feel about the chances?
I'd be very nervous, to be honest, because there's a lot that's still out there, obviously. But when you look at the trend lines, particularly in a state like Virginia, Northern Virginia, that Loudoun County area has become so much of a bellwether for the state and almost for the region. As the demographic patterns have shifted and changed, and the parties at the state and the national level have to be cognizant of how people, not just moving around, but how that's impacting the vote patterns and where people are going to turn out and how that vote settles down. And I think we're going to see this play out across the country tonight in a big way, potentially. And you're looking at those numbers in Florida. That race is a lot tighter than I think people thought it would be at this point. And again, that says a lot about how people have kind of settled into their vote and almost settled into old habits in some respects, particularly when you look at the kind of momentum that someone like Gillum had in the state of Florida.
As you're speaking, we're looking at a 50-50 race right there, lower left, Rick Scott, Bill Nelson. On the other side, 49-49 and change. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, and it really speaks to just how the voters have processed these elections. Trump is no doubt a factor, but at the same time, he had that ability to sort of settle the vote down for a lot of Republicans in key areas, and that'll be interesting to juxtapose against something like, you know, what we see in Virginia right now, where the Democrats have picked up some congressional seats. Does that translate in Pennsylvania? Does it translate in Nevada? Does it translate in other parts of the country? That's the thing to look at as we go forward and these numbers start to come in.
Michael, don't move an inch. We're going to fit in a break. I'm watching Kornacki at the board, looking at county-by-county numbers in Florida. A lot of stories on the move right now. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We are back 8:22 Eastern Time. Ohio governor right now. We have this too close to call between Cordray and Mike DeWine.
30% of the vote in there.
Yeah, there you go. Steve Kornacki has been taking an early look at Texas and also these numbers out of Florida. Steve?
Yeah, let's just keep on Florida now, because I think statewide we've had higher turnout than expected. So our estimate for the overall turnout here has gone up since the start of the night. But still, we've got more than 7 million votes that have been counted. You see the gap here; it's just gone up as I'm speaking. About 37,000 vote lead for Rick Scott. Where is there vote left here? Less populated up here in the Panhandle, but you can see there are a couple of counties up here where we don't have any vote. This is going to be big for Rick Scott, small in terms of population. Look down here, Miami-Dade. Now, again, remember what I say, that 75%, that's 75% of precincts. They don't run that early vote, the mail-in vote, through the precinct. So proportionally, that's a little out of whack. But there is, and it's same thing in Broward, I'll give you an example. I think here's what we expect in terms of vote out of Broward. This adds up to 485,000 votes is what this adds up to. I think we're going to be just over 600,000 out of Broward when all is said and done. So there is still vote to come out of Broward. It's not going to double, though, so keep that in mind. Palm Beach almost all in. And again, you see how Nelson is running there. So there are still some Democratic areas. But the story, as we said, Scott, and for that matter, DeSantis in the governor's race, the same-day vote in those Trump areas, those Republican areas, seems to have come through for them and made this a real game there. Memories of 2 years ago, certainly. Texas, the votes we're seeing now, again, Texas, a heavy early voting state. Take our first look at the Senate race. First look, but more than 2 million votes counted. Now, the reason, one thing that's helping Beto O'Rourke right now, one of the places where we've got a lot of vote here is Dallas County. You can see over 500,000 votes have been counted here. This is a core Democratic area. Hillary Clinton got 61% of the vote here, you can see in 2016. So Beto O'Rourke is improving on that in a core Democratic area. I think more interesting is when you get outside of Austin. Williamson County here, this is one of the wealthiest, this is a very wealthy county. This is Beto O'Rourke doing 9 points better than Hillary Clinton did. And also you go to Hayes County on the other side, about a 10-point improvement right there. So those are numbers in that area that the O'Rourke campaign wants to see. But that's very early. You've got some Democratic-friendly areas that are in. They need to get that kind of shift in the suburbs around the state. They need to have a turnout surge there. And we got to see what happens as these Republican counties begin to come in as well.
All right, Steve Kornacki, thank you. We have 2 calls to pass along to our viewers. From Illinois, we are projecting Pritzker wins as the next governor of the state of Illinois. A pickup for the Democrats, and a hold in Maryland as Larry Hogan will be returning. We have one more Rhode Island governor. It's going to be Raimondo. Gina Raimondo, the Democrat. And let's go over to James Carville, longtime Democratic strategist. It was, I think, in 2016, Florida was turning when we went to James Carville. And if you look at the spectrum of Benjamin Moore paints, I don't know what color I would have described your face as just at that moment, but whatever blood was draining out, your mood started to go south, James. How are you thinking about the country right now?
Well, in 2016, I was sitting between Chuck Todd and Hugh Hewitt, and Chuck Todd said that Hillary was running ahead of Obama in Prince William in Virginia and Hillsborough in Florida, and I said, great. And then Hugh Hewitt said, Upshot said there's a 65% chance that Trump wins Florida, and I knew right there. And the blood did go out of my face. Tonight, there was some hope that the Democrats would have a wave election. It's not going to be a wave election. It could still be a good election. There's a lot of drama left in Florida. Some of the stuff I saw out of Texas that Kornacki put up there, particularly Williamson County, I thought was encouraging. But that's still a lot of politics left. But I will wait and see. Hopefully the Democrats get the House back. I was a little more optimistic about Florida than it's turned out to be, and I think we have a nail bite in a lot of places here tonight.
James, how tough do you think it's going to be? We keep running the number on the right-hand corner of our screen, 21 for the Dems in the House.
Well, I think they're going to do well in some of these suburban seats. In places North Carolina, some of them Georgia will do well. I think it could pick up in Texas. But the aspiration to pick up a lot of seats doesn't seem like it's coming to fruition. A lot of them will be close, and there's still a good chance that the Democrats win the House, but I see the chances of a wave kind of dissipating every time I see something on the board.
James, this is Rachel in New York. Thanks for being with us tonight. You're talking about how you see the wave dissipating and not building there. Obviously, the Democrats hope to get control of the House with as big a majority as they can get. But even if they've only got a 1-seat majority, that means that they will take over the committee chairmanships in every single committee. Nancy Pelosi will be Speaker once again. How important is the size of the Democratic majority if that wave doesn't materialize, but they do win?
Well, I mean, look, you always want, you need some safety in there. I mean, people could switch, people could die, 1,000 things could happen. So you want some margin there, and let's wait and see. I mean, they still could get it. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying this is not going to be the wave election that people like me would have hoped for. It can still be a good election, but some of these races are going to be, very tight, and it's still volatile down in Florida. You still got a lot of Broward out, which is, big county. And it'd be hard for Scott to make some of this up in the panhandle, like smaller, but it's going to be close. I went into this morning feeling really almost confident, almost to the point of being cocky about Florida. I no longer have that feeling.
How are you feeling about Georgia tonight, James?
Well, we got to count them. I was just, I mean, some of these, the vote turnaround in Georgia is going to be so high. You know, in a place like, you know, suburban Atlanta, the Fultons and the Mariettas and all these counties start coming in, they just dwarf a lot of these rural counties. So, I mean, there's a lot of counting left to do. I'm going to be watching it really close. But, you know, we'll see. But right now, you know, Florida Senate is kind of central to what's going on, I think.
In San Francisco tonight, Democratic strategist James Carville. Mr. Carville, it is always a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. I love that, mister. Thank you.
I'll use that whenever you need it.
Tell my children that.
I will
Thank
do.
You. All right.
I will do.
And he's a proper Southerner, so he should appreciate the honorific. We're coming up on 30 seconds away from the next half hour. The poll closings, we only have the state of Arkansas coming in fresh at 8:30, but we're also going to use this opportunity to update folks on the other races people are so highly interested in and people are waiting for. And Rachel's warning, her admonition at the top of the evening, and it might be a very late night, remains true. That holds even at this hour of 8:30. So here we are. The poll has closed. Polls have closed in Arkansas. We are projecting Governor Hutchinson is handily reelected there. And on to the other two. We're watching Florida, too close to call. Georgia, too early to call. So projected on the side of the building we sit in.
Georgia race again, only 16% of that vote in Georgia. In Georgia, the issue of the administration of the election has been like the other candidate in the race. As we talked about earlier this evening, Brian Kemp faced many, many calls, not just from his opponent, but from people like former President Jimmy Carter and from others, that he should step down from his role as Secretary of State administering the election, given that he's also running at the top of the ticket in the election. Georgia's election security has been very, very controversial. There have been a number of lawsuits against the state. There have been a number of election security public complaints and publicly reported issues in Georgia. When there have been concerns raised by outsiders, and by outsiders in this case, I mean even the federal government, about the security of Georgia elections, Brian Kemp has turned that around and made it sound like they must have been trying to hack into Georgia if they discovered those faults. So the issue of Georgia voter suppression, him purging hundreds of thousands of people off the rolls in advance of this election, is inexorable as we watch the vote numbers just absolutely crawl in that state.
And no paper. No paper trail.
Have zero paper.
No evidence. If it screws up, it's gone.
Yeah.
And a judge in that case, there's a federal judge in that case who's been considering issues about Georgia voter suppression and ballot security there. And the judge seemed absolutely poised to order Georgia to finally get a paper backup, but said at the last minute, we are too close to the election to make that kind of
Let
change.
me just interrupt 1 second. We have a winner in the Senate race in the state of New Jersey. New Jersey remains blue. Menendez, who had so many ethical and legal troubles, has turned away. Former pharma executive Bob Hugin ran an aggressive race, especially in the media markets of New York and Philadelphia. But we are projecting, when it's all said and done, Bob Menendez returns to the U.S. Senate from New Jersey.
We should be clear, that visual might have confused you a little bit, right? So this is NBC News projecting that, as Brian said, when all the votes come in, Bob Menendez will have won this race. The actual number of votes in and counted right now is only 1%, and those show the Republican challenger ahead. But projections are put together through a lot of things other than just the actually counted vote. So that wasn't a typo, and Bob Menendez looks like he is going back to the Senate.
And Steve Kornacki has new numbers from Florida. Steve?
Yeah, okay, so the gap here right now for Bill Nelson in this race now has climbed over 50,000. I want to show you where the vote is left because it's beginning to come into focus here. In terms of Democrats and where they can still find votes, two places to key in on. Number one here is Broward County. We expect there's going to be about 630,000 votes that are going to be cast here. That means there's probably about 145,000 left to be counted. You can see Nelson is defeating Scott at about a 2-to-1 clip here. So if there's about 145,000 left, what would that give you? About 95, about 100, say about 100, maybe about a 55,000 vote plurality here if things broke the Democrats' way here. Miami-Dade is a little bit more confusing. We have a range here. There's about 712,000, 713,000 votes that have been counted here. We think there could be up to 900,000 votes that come out of this county, but there is a lot of confusion here right now about where exactly that's going to land. So that could be the ceiling, 900,000, but it may end up being less than that. Those are two big Democratic areas still to come. Keep in mind, they are balanced by two things, however. The scattering of rural counties, particularly in the Panhandle, where there are still votes to come in, not many votes, but they're going to be overwhelmingly Republican, and also a couple of counties that have a little bit more population. Let me start down here. Collier County, you can see still vote to come in here, still a significant amount. Scott winning that one 2-1. If we take a look up here in Charlotte County, still vote to come in here. Scott leading that almost 2-1. Up here in the Panhandle as well, there's one additional. So there are still places where Republicans are going to balance out gains that Democrats make in those core counties. Again, right now, let's just see if it's changed. It is now 60,000 votes for Scott in the Senate race. In the governor's race, the margin for Ron DeSantis, it is now approaching 100,000. You're at 83,000. 83,000 is the margin for Ron DeSantis in that race. Again, a pretty similar turnout pattern holds there as well.
We are on it. We'll stay on it. We have to sneak in another break here. With this proviso, we'll bust out of any commercials for any major calls we have at our election headquarters here in New York as you look at the state of the Florida Senate race.
It is 8:39 on the East Coast. One of the Senate races that we are watching tonight is in the great state of Missouri, where Republicans would so love to unseat Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill. As you're seeing the results there, we've only got 1% of the vote in right now. This is too close to call right now, but as you're seeing, we've got less than 30,000 votes. Joining us now live from Missouri is Senator Claire McCaskill. Senator McCaskill, thank you so much. We know this is an incredibly fraught and busy evening for you.
Yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking.
Well, we've only got 1% of the vote in terms of what we're looking at. How do you feel about how things have gone over the course of the campaign, but also in its closing days?
Well, you know, we had to crawl out of a pretty deep hole. Donald Trump won this state by 20 points. So I'm really proud that we kind of clawed our way to dead even near the end of the campaign. But you know me, I'm going to be really honest with you. I have no flipping idea what's going to happen tonight. We could win and we could lose.
Yeah, Senator,
I feel like our turnout was great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the turnout was great in places we needed it to be great, but it was also strong in other parts of the state where we're not going to do as well. So I think it could go either way.
Missouri is such a tough state. It's like riding a bucking bronco representing that state. I remember of all the weird things, Eisenhower lost in 56, he won in 52, then they dumped him in Missouri. And there you are. It's like a bucking bronco or a Missouri mule, maybe. What is it about Missouri that makes it so hard to stay atop of?
Well, if you think about it, running this race as a Democrat in Missouri. Has been very Republican lately. So not only do I have to excite the base and get them out, but I also have to make sure that people understand that I'm not ashamed to be a moderate. So it's a little bit like walking, chewing gum at the same time, and juggling all at once to make everything work, to make sure people understand that my moderation is principled, but I'm not afraid to compromise, which I think a lot of Missouri voters like, that I'm independent. I don't always vote the party line. But it's tough. This is a tough state in terms of it will never be completely red or completely blue, but it's pretty close to red these days.
Senator Gene Robinson, the president had that big rally out in your state. What impact do you think that had? Was it positive or negative for you?
Oh, listen, he was here so often, I figure he was building a golf course, right? He was here time after time after time. And then, of course, he finished the campaign here with Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Jean Perot and Kellyanne Conway. It was a cast down in Cape Girardeau last night. So clearly they want this state, and they've worked very hard to do it. I do think it's a double-edged sword, because while it motivates the Trump base when he's here, it also motivated a lot of people in my base that really are not happy with President Trump. So I don't think we'll know whether or not ultimately it worked or not until every vote is counted tonight.
Senator McCaskill, as a woman in the Senate and as a woman leader in Missouri, who's had a lot of different positions of authority in your state and now in the country, I have to ask you how you feel like gender plays right now in terms of being a senior elected woman at a time when gender politics in our country right now and the fight over sexism and sexual harassment and sexual assault and accountability and all of those things is red hot and such a volatile issue. Obviously, we're seeing a record number of women running this year, particularly on the Democratic side. But I just wanted your perspective on that right now, especially right now not knowing how tonight's going to end for you.
Well, I think it's always going to be an issue that's out there. Sometimes it's more subliminal. Sometimes it's front and center. It's probably been a little more front and center this time. But I got to tell you honestly, Rachel, I think the biggest problem for me is not as much gender as it is that in politics today, it's really a mark against you if you know what you're doing. Experience, this is one of the few fields where experience is considered a negative. Right now. I mean, in most careers, if you've done a lot of different things and learned a lot, then that is a positive thing. But right now, people really don't get excited about folks who have spent their life in public service. They want something new. And so I think the fact that I have served the public so long, and maybe that's one of the things that's hurting Bill Nelson. I think if you've been serving the public for a long time, that's a difficult hurdle to get over these days.
Senator Claire McCaskill tonight awaiting news of her own fate with her own voters in Missouri. Good luck to you, Senator. Thank you for taking some time to be with us while you're still watching those vote totals come in. We're looking forward to seeing how this turns out tonight. Thank you.
The senator mentioned something new. I'm looking at Steve Kornacki, who is deep in the heart of Texas. Speaking of something new.
Something
Steve?
new, something blue.
Yeah, in Texas, this is very similar to Florida in that you've got a ton of early vote. That early vote gets sort of put out there almost all at once. Then you wait for the same day. And the question that hangs over the same day is there going to be a trend on the final day that's at odds with what you see in the early vote? So, again, this looks like we think about half the vote that's going to be cast total statewide. But when you start to go into these individual counties, what you'll see here, this will be a good example. A ton of vote here. It's going to say 1% of precincts. That's the giveaway that we are looking at early vote right here. So again, here's the comparison as we can show you how the early vote is looking for Beto O'Rourke. In 2016, Donald Trump won the state of Texas by 9 points. So you basically got to improve the margin if you're a Democrat by 9 points or more across the state. So use that as a rough benchmark and we can compare. This is Dallas. In 2016, the margin here for Clinton was 26. Tonight, the margin in the early vote, 33, a 7-point improvement. Go next door to Tarrant County. The margin for Trump was 9. The margin for Trump right now, 1 in the early vote. That's down by 8. You go up to Denton, 21 has been cut to 10. That's 11 points. You're seeing this in the Dallas area pretty consistently. 17 sits at 7, 10-point improvement. Where you're seeing a little bit better than that in the early vote for Democrats, take a look here. Travis County, this is Austin, 39 goes to 53. You talked about an explosion of Democratic energy, especially in the early vote. It speaks to that. Go north of Austin, Williamson, 10-point advantage there for Trump has turned into a 3-point advantage for O'Rourke. Here's an interesting one. We have yet to hear from Travis County, biggest in the state, Houston, but go to the suburbs outside of it. Clinton won this by 7. 10. This is a little bit of a disappointment maybe for Democrats. Only 10 right now in the early vote. But again, this is like Florida. We await that same day.
All right, Steve Kornacki, thank you. And more on this same topic. Chris Hayes has now made his way to O'Rourke headquarters in El Paso. And Chris, what are you hearing there?
So I've been talking to a lot of strategists here in Texas, and there are a lot of eyes wide open emoji right now because the numbers are different than people are used to seeing in statewide races. There's something interesting happening in terms of what's going to happen here. That Tarrant County is a good place to think about. That's a place that is the largest urban Republican district in the United States. It encompasses Fort Worth, Texas, right next to Dallas. That's a place where when the early vote came in, it was 50-50, as Steve was just talking about. that's a number that puts Beto in the ballpark. So far, the kinds of early voting they're seeing, you're talking to Democratic strategists, particularly those who are running the state house races here. There's a bunch of state houses that have been targeted for Democrats. They're down in that state house 95 to 55. And they've got about 10 or 11 they're feeling pretty good about. Those are in Republican districts that they're looking like they may be able to flip. All of that points to an evening here in Texas as the votes come in that is more interesting than it's been in Texas for a very long time when you're looking at what kind of dynamics Beto would need in order to defeat the incumbent Ted Cruz.
And Chris, oh, I'm sorry.
Brian, you go ahead.
No, please.
I'm sorry to interject. I was just going to ask kind of a dumb question, which is, Chris, I know that you've been through a lot of races like this. You've been through losing and winning races. You've been at headquarters as the votes have come in. Just from your own reporting and your own sense, do you think that the Beto O'Rourke campaign believes that it will win tonight, or do they believe that they will lose tonight?
They believe they will win. Now, that's a crazy belief in some ways because of the history of statewide Democrats in Texas. If you look behind me, and I don't know if you can see the shot, the setup here is not the setup of a person who is expecting to come out and give a desultory concession speech after losing by 9 or 15 points, which is traditionally what happens to Democrats in the state of Texas running statewide. We are in a ballpark. There is a ton of media here. There's a huge venue behind us with bands. This is a campaign that I think went into today feeling they were in the ballpark, literally and figuratively, of what they would need. And if you're looking some of the Republican strategists right now who know this state well, particularly some of the big data people, when they're looking at the modeling, they're looking at a number of 8.2 million votes. They're looking what they're seeing in Tarrant County particularly. There's some real nervousness on the Republican side right now, and it's going to be an interesting night.
Chris Hayes, thank you. If you don't mind, we'd like to stay in touch because we think you might be at one of the more exciting stories and storylines of the evening. Chris Hayes at O'Rourke headquarters in El Paso, Texas. Nicole Wallace, I am thinking about the best laid plans in 2016, the Javits Center on the west side of Manhattan.
You know, I was thinking, listening to you and Chris Hayes, there's only so far science and polling and academics can take you. And so the people that sit in headquarters in front of computers with, you know, whirling hats on, they can only get you so far. They don't make you win or lose. Candidates make you win or lose. Candidates with magic make you win or lose. And candidates that are hated make you win or lose. Ted Cruz was supposed to win. Ted Cruz really, to lose this after sort of crawling back to Donald Trump, who insulted his father and his wife, would be a human tragedy, but an immense political victory. He is the most polarizing figure in the Republican Party, was famously at odds with the Bush family, the other famous Republican family to hail from Texas. But to talk to Texans and to talk to Texas Republicans, as I have over the last 3 months, there are Beto signs in every corner of this state. There are Beto signs in Amarillo. There are Beto signs all over El Paso, where he's from, but there are Beto signs in neighborhoods, in blocks, in streets that are known to be Republican strongholds. So it would not be surprising to see an upset there, and it would really...
Really? You wouldn't be surprised to see an upset?
Well, of course we would be surprised. But my point is, it wouldn't be surprising to Beto, because I think he is running as someone who he didn't have a pollster, he didn't do the conventional things, and he didn't become hostage to sort of the politics of red and blue, and it can't be done, and you're running against Ted Cruz. It would be the story of the night if he were to win, but I'm betting he would do an interview and say to you, I'm not surprised I won.
Whatever happens in Texas is technically going to be a surprise, because if they usually get 4 million votes in a midterm election and they're going to get 8 million
or 9
something
million,
like that this time, it's all a surprise. Nobody knows what that extra vote is going to be.
And if in 2020 Texas turns out 8 or 9 million votes as their baseline from which they build on a presidential year, I mean, that changes Texas and the country.
If Texas becomes a battleground state, it changes the country. I mean,
he had one asset that I can't believe it was a week ago. We had the Hardball College tour down there at the University of Houston. I've never seen, well, Bill Clinton might be the best retailer I've ever seen. I mean, he works the last one in the room. He stays till everybody's gone. He wants to shake hands with everybody, chat up everybody. This guy's that good. He has none of the other problems. This guy has all the good stuff. So I think not having a pollster, Joe Kennedy, his best buddy in the House, said, I told him for a year, please get a pollster. Don't dive in the pool till you know how deep it is or how cold it is. And he wanted to do it.
Yeah. No one will have a pollster down if he wins with that one.
Right. The only thing we know for sure, 8:52 p.m. East Coast time. Another break. A quick one. We're back right after this.
We've got a bunch of new poll closings coming up in just a couple of minutes at 9 o'clock at the top of the hour. Before that, quickly, we've got some more calls in House races, and Steve's going to tell us about the overall estimate of how the House is going to go. Steve Kornacki.
Yeah, we've had Kentucky 6. We've had our eye on this one all night. We've now officially made a projection here. Andy Barr, the Republican incumbent, is going to hang on in this district, holding off Amy.
Hey, Steve, I have to interrupt you. Indiana Senate, Republican pickup. Donnelly has been turned away. This has just come into us. Mike Braun. Donald Trump worked hard to flip this seat from the Democrats. We are estimating that when all the votes are counted, this will be a GOP pickup in the Senate. Steve Kornacki, back to you.
Yeah, the other big piece of news we have from you comes from our decision desk that has been watching these early House results, seeing Democrats get what they needed to out of Virginia 10. Again, they hit the level they expected. Florida 27 went as expected. Again, they need to get only a share of these, only about a third of these to get the House. So to lose these is not necessarily bad for Democrats. The question in a lot of cases here is, are they improving over Hillary Clinton's performance significantly? You saw that in Kentucky 6. What that means is our decision desk is looking at the totality of this, sort of extrapolating out the trends and numbers they're seeing to similar districts around the country and coming up with their initial estimate of the night, which I can now show you. Their initial estimate is that Democrats will end the night with 224 seats plus or minus 8. So keep that in mind. 224 minus 8 would get you to 216. 216 would be short of the 218 needed for a majority. 224 plus 8 would get you to 232, comfortably over what you need for a majority. And what that means is, if you look at that range, where that number falls in it, we think it's about right now a 65% chance, about a 2/3 chance that when all these districts come in, if these trends hold, about a 2/3 chance that Democrats will end up in control at the end of the night. So again, we're going to see more of these districts start to come in, more of these individual counties and precincts. That number is going to change. I'll tell you now, it might change frequently, but use that as the benchmark. The first estimate of the night comes in with Democrats a range of 216 on the low end to 232 on the high end, and a 2/3 chance at this moment, we think, that they will end up in control of the House.
And again, on the low end of that estimate, Steve, which is 216, that is not enough to make Nancy Pelosi Speaker. That would leave, presumably, Kevin McCarthy as Speaker.
That's right.
At this point, we've just got a call just ahead. We're waiting for poll closings at 9, but we have a new call right now. This is the West Virginia Senate race. NBC News can project that Democrat Joe Manchin will hold on to his seat in West Virginia. This was obviously a state that Trump won by huge double digits in 2016. That made Republicans very excited about the prospect of knocking off Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is a home state senator above all else. He is a moderate Democrat, much in the mold of Claire McCaskill, who's fighting for her seat tonight in Missouri. But Joe Manchin will be returning back to the Senate, and that will make the Democrats happy, especially given that just moments ago it looks like they have lost Joe Donnelly's seat out of Indiana.